Welcome to Strip Coverlet, where we wrangle the bigger picture of literature. I am Adrian Fort.
And I'm Dalton Gentry.
And we are here for a poetry review. Dalton, what are we doing today?
We're doing a little Charles Bukowski, because there is always room for Bukowski on the worldly internet.
Chucky Buck.
Oh, Chucky Buck. We are doing The Strangest Sight You Ever Did See. A little lesser-known poem from Bukowski.
Yeah.
You want to just barrel right in? 3 good things, 3 bad things? Or reading? What do you want to do?
We'll do a couple readings. I'll do a reading, you'll do a reading, and then we'll do 3 good things, 3 bad things, best line, literary analysis, rating and recommendation.
Okay.
So I'll jump on first reading. You'll get the second.
Let's do it.
The strangest sight you ever did see. I had this room in front of DeLong Pre, and I used to sit for hours in the daytime looking out the front window. There were any number of girls who would walk by, swaying. It helped my afternoons, added something to the beer and the cigarettes. One day I saw something extra. I heard the sound of it first. "Come on, push," he said. There was a long board about 2.5 feet wide and 8 feet long. Nailed to the ends and in the middle were roller skates. He was pulling in front, 2 long ropes attached to the board, and she was in back, guiding and also pushing. All their possessions were tied to the board. Pots, pans, bed quilts, and so forth were roped to the board, tied down. And the skate wheels were grinding. He was white, red-necked, a southerner, thin, slumped, his pants about to fall from his ass, his face pinked by the sun and cheap wine. And she was black and walked upright, pushing. She was simply beautiful in turban, long green earrings, yellow dress from the neck to ankle. Her face was gloriously indifferent. "Don't worry," he shouted, looking back at her. "Somebody will rent us a place." She didn't answer. Then they were gone, although I still heard the skate wheels. They're going to make it, I thought. I'm sure they did.
Lovely Adrian Fort reading. I like how you always start out with the Adrian Fort reading, so I may ruin the next reading. Let me just do that for you. The strangest sight you ever did see. I had this room in the front of DeLong Pre, and I used to sit there for hours in the daytime, looking out the front window. There were any number of girls who would walk by, swaying. It helped my afternoons, added something to the beer and the cigarettes. One day I saw something extra. I heard the sound of it first. "Come on, push," he said. There was a long board, about 2.5 feet wide and 8 feet long. Nailed to the ends, and in the middle were roller skates. He was pulling in front, 2 long ropes attached to the board, and she was in back, guiding and also pushing. All their possessions were tied to the board. Pots, pans, bed quilts, and so forth were roped to the board, tied down, and the skate wheels were grinding. He was white, red-necked, a southerner, thin, slumped, his pants about to fall from his ass, his face pinked by the sun and cheap wine, and she was black and walked upright, pushing. She was simply beautiful, in turban, long green earrings, yellow dress from neck to ankle. Her face was gloriously indifferent. "Don't worry," he shouted, looking back at her. "Somebody will rent us a place." She didn't answer. Then they were gone, although I still heard the skate wheels. They're going to make it, I thought. I'm sure they did. Bukowski. At his finest. Always at his finest.
Chucky Buck.
So 3 good things, 3 bad things from this here.
3 good things. Number 1, you feel the rise and fall of the percolation of the interest here, right?
Okay.
You feel him sitting back. You feel the rise in the interest, the rise in the energy of this poem, and then it just sort of cruises down.
Okay.
Which is a very neat trick to do with words.
It is, it is.
2, this, being the strangest sight you ever did see, tells us more about the speaker than it does the subject.
Okay.
Which is a nice way to illustrate a speaker in poetry.
All right.
3, put this poem through the eyes of any other poet, right? Say Frost wrote this poem.
Okay.
Say Emily Dickinson wrote this poem. Say any of these people, any of these greats, these behemoths in the world of poetry, old Billy Wigglestick himself, any of those people write this poem, I do not think they have the discipline and the confidence in their own voice to let the scene be.
Bold statement, but I'm about it.
This is naked.
Okay.
This is this.
It's raw.
This is not Bukowski.
Okay.
This is what happened.
Okay, fair enough. Now, I'm going to jump right into my 3 good things because you just said the statement, this is not Bukowski. This is essential Bukowski.
Right.
I know, I get
Okay,
what you're saying.
okay.
I just had transition. You get everything in this. It is a good range of emotion in simplicity. There's loneliness, there's love, there's hope, there's despair, all packed into a very short little poem that you just have to dig for. Whatever you want is there. There are more characters in this than there should be. You have a lot of things going on in this, and it's not presented like that. But this is a massive scene. You have the women that Bukowski are watching, you have the couple that Bukowski's watching, you have Bukowski himself. A lot of characters packed into a few lines. And finally, you feel good about this, and you're not sure why. Something feels right.
I'm gonna raise a point that I think might pull that into question.
I hope so.
3 bad things.
All right.
1, if you're not a Bukowski fan, this poem sucks.
Yeah.
2, this is the type of poem that makes it easy for people to point at the enterprise of poetry and say, see, what a bunch of beat-offs.
Okay.
3, this young man's face was pinked with, what was it? Cheap wine and what was it? The sun.
Wine.
With the sun and cheap wine. Not anger, not embarrassment. I have to believe those things are at play too.
Okay. My 3 bad things, and this again goes with your first one. If you aren't looking for something wonderful in this, you aren't looking for beauty, this is just the ramblings of an old man. If you aren't going into this reading it, wanting something, yeah, whatever. Like most Bukowski, you're not going to find any traditional rhyme patterns, anything like that, so I think that goes along with saying if you're not a poetry fan, if you're not a Bukowski fan, who the hell cares?
Right.
I can't talk right now.
Yeah.
Who the hell cares?
Breathless. Even I'm breathless.
You have to want to like this. I got a buddy who I just lent my Bukowski book, which is why I'm reading off yours right now. And for the longest time, he's like, well, I've heard of Bukowski, and I always thought I'd like it. But like, it wasn't until I sat him down, I'm like, no, you have to get into Bukowski. You have to read it. That's where he found it.
Yep.
That's where it clicked. You have to have someone to do that for you, or you have to do that for yourself. You can't just pick this off the shelf and read it and go.
Yeah, and I've talked a little, was that your 3rd?
Yes.
So not to derail the whole conversation, but I've talked a little bit on the channel in the past year about, in your absence, you two-timing hussy, about you have to find that in poem with Bukowski. For me, it was My Old Man.
Okay.
It was something with which I clearly identified. And from that point, you are aware of the speaker in the poem as a person, not a godlike being writing a poem.
Okay. That's something I really do like about Bukowski is it is a very raw, real approach to poetry. And some of the other poems that you get from Bukowski, they hurt, man. Once you get into them, they hurt. And Bukowski is the only person for me who's been really able to capture that, to speak for the everyman.
Okay.
If that makes any sense at all.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Do you have a favorite line from this?
I do, and if you want to go ahead.
Mine was, there were any number of girls who would walk by, swaying. It helped my afternoons, added something to the beer and the cigarettes. Because I think that just tells you exactly where this guy is in life.
Yeah.
As someone who has no idea about, I'm assuming he's living in California here.
Okay.
I have no idea what a room in front of DeLong Pre means. I have no idea what it means to sit outside for hours, because that could mean any number of things. Are you retired? Are you jobless? Are you living someplace nice and you don't have any hobbies? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
That right there tells you exactly what you need to know about this guy. He's a fan of the simpler things in life.
Okay.
Girls in short dresses, beer, and some cigarettes.
And very few people do that anymore.
Yeah.
You got that stereotypical the old man feeding the birds in the park.
Right.
You don't really see it too much anymore.
Yeah, they've all been strangled.
Either that or we don't live near parks and we can't afford the bread.
Well, and all the parks in Kansas City suck.
This is fair. My favorite line. She was simply beautiful, in turban, long green earrings, yellow dress from neck to ankle. Her face was gloriously indifferent. Gloriously indifferent. That captures that character. It's a wonderful thing, and you feel what's going on there. That draws you emotionally into this piece.
That line is exactly what I can't stand about Billy Collins. Because Billy Collins, the poet, is gloriously indifferent.
I like Billy Collins, the poet.
You were gloriously indifferent.
And maybe this is why I like this line, because every woman I fall in love with is gloriously indifferent.
All right.
I try my best. But anyway, characters.
Gloriously indifferent. I've known 2 of the women you've fallen in love with. I've met a 3rd. 2 of them I would not describe as gloriously indifferent.
Okay, fair enough. I think I'm Billy Collins on the other side there. I'm actually Billy Collins. I want you to know that.
I think what it is that you were so gloriously indifferent that
I
you
want
see it
to
in other
impose
people.
myself onto other people so I fall in love
And
with
you're
myself.
not, you're not really on the receiving end of all of those things.
It's fair. It's just a fair statement. I do think it's interesting, and I really want to dig on this, is the amount of characters that you get with this, and I think that's really an accomplishment in this poem. This is painting a scene, wholeheartedly. And like I think you touched on that when you were talking about, you know exactly where this man is. Bukowski has this amazing ability to do that with very simple language. You know a lot about this man. There are at least 3 characters in this piece that you can draw from, and countless others who are just passers-by in this. And I think that's a great thing in poetry. It's hitting the things that you don't notice in life.
Well, it's what is known as the objective correlative.
Okay.
Not in ideas, but things.
Okay.
Bukowski is calling into light simply those things which make the difference.
All right.
He's not using the judgmental language. He's not using metaphors with which to cast light. He's bringing that stuff into the light.
Okay.
And he's just looking at it. And he's pointing at different parts that you get to see too.
You can find beauty in anything, though. I mean, this is not Robert Frost talking about the trees again. This is not Emily Dickinson moaning again about how terrible life is.
This isn't Billy Collins talking about the coffee that he almost drank with breakfast.
It's just Bukowski. Just living.
Right.
And I love that about this. It's a wonderful thing. Do you have a point you want to bring up here? Or we can argue about?
Not with this. I think that
Okay.
I don't agree with you that there's too many people here, because I think what this does is this presents a very good. What this does is it lets you look at things. You get to see the speaker.
Yes.
And the speaker is this removed. He's Newton's God.
Okay.
Newtonian God, right? That set the world like a clock and let it run. That's what it's called, I think. He's just observing. I'm sure they'll make it.
Okay.
I'm sure they will.
Are these 2 characters pushing the property down the street lovers?
Yes, I think almost undoubtedly.
It never says specifically. There's nothing to really push towards that, but that is the feel I get from this.
Well, I think, so part of what that is they're absolutely lovers.
Okay.
And we all know, we all have a friend, male or female, because this happens both ways, who is constantly in love, absolute love, with fuck-ups.
Okay.
Right? I've been that fuck-up. Okay? I know this dynamic.
Okay.
So, in this scene, she is literally following him.
Yes.
She is literally following him.
Everything's going to be okay. We're going to make it.
Right, and why are they going to make it?
Because everything's going to be okay.
Because one side of this relationship is absolutely complicit.
Okay.
She does not question him. Which sort of leads me into the fact that besides the overt intimation of race and gender, I think you'd really be hard-pressed to make this into a discriminatorily racist or sexist text.
Okay.
But it does, I think, open up an interesting door to the discussion.
It does.
Of sexism, sexism and racism, aside from the diabolical application of his biases. Do you know what I mean by that?
Yes.
But no one here is trying to take advantage of sex or race.
No.
But the observance of the differences is being made.
Well, that brings up the question, why can't they find a place to live? Especially this time when it was being written.
Well, I think you have to be blaming it on the white guy here.
Okay.
I think you have to be, because he's the one who is he trying to reassure when he says, don't worry, someone will rent us a place?
Himself.
Yes. Which means that he's the one to blame.
Okay. In addition to that, I mean, they could just be poverty-stricken. It could be as simple as that. I mean, they are pushing all their possessions on a board, in a long board. When I first read this, I got longboard. I immediately think skateboard. So that gives me a different connotation to like who these people are. But when you look at it, it is a long piece of plywood, basically.
Right. Or there's a surfboards are longboards too, right? There's shortboard and longboard
so.
for surfboards, I believe.
I live nowhere near an ocean, but let's
right.
go
No,
with that.
but I think so.
But if you've ever moved, renting a U-Haul and loading it up is a task. At what point do you have to get a piece of plywood and put it on wheels and push your property.
When your stuff has been put on the curb.
Yes.
But it also calls into question what time period we're speaking about.
Okay.
How was she dressed?
In a dress with earrings. She was simply beautiful in turban, long green earrings, yellow dress from neck to ankle. Long dress. That's kind of an elegant dress as well.
It reads very much like the 70s, right?
Okay.
She's in a long yellow dress.
All right.
She's wearing the turban earrings.
Okay.
It reads to me like a picture from the 70s.
Okay.
You've got to believe if he is able to survive without employment, this Bukowski fellow or the speaker in this poem, that it's not today. Because you really get the sense that he's unemployed here, right?
True.
Like, all he's doing is sitting on his porch and watching women walk by.
Well, everybody needs a hobby.
But let's get to that. So, I think the subtle nuance of sexism and racism.
Okay.
I think we all know someone, and maybe this is just because we live in Missouri, but we all know, I know several people who start every story they're ever going to tell with, so I know this Mexican fella.
Okay.
So I know this black guy.
Okay.
Right? Is that racist? Yeah. Yeah,
It is.
That's racist. Is it?
It's a colloquial thing, though. I mean, that's the accepted tone of this area.
But is it meant to systematically oppress and ruin? No, that's silly. It is simply they are simply lines through which people cast the world, depending on how they see things. And that nuance is something that we've lost in this ironically black and white world.
All right.
So I think that this is a text. So what does our speaker do? He sits and he watches the women walk by.
He is the watcher.
We never get the sense that he's catcalling. We never get the sense that he's, hey, baby.
He's just existing.
He's just existing. And it's not something that he's just watching the women walk by.
Okay.
But do you get to do that today?
I don't think so.
You're a creeper.
This is true.
You're a creeper if you do that today.
And that is part of a different generation. I mean, let's say it was the 70s. Sitting on the front porch, smoking cigarettes, having a beer, and just existing was a pretty acceptable thing to do. I sit on the back deck all the time, smoke cigarettes, drink beer. It's a relaxing thing.
But where are you sitting?
Away from the public.
The back deck.
Exactly. So there is a difference there, and maybe it's just, again, where we live. I have a little more area. I'm not just confined to this one area. But with this being Bukowski, and with the tone of this piece, it really kind of gives you a sense of loneliness as well. Maybe he is unemployed, but maybe he just doesn't have anything else, man. Maybe this is his interaction. This is his social time. He is just simply sitting and watching.
I think it absolutely is. And I think therein we find the ultimate irony of this poem. The ultimate irony of this poem, which will change your initial reading, or change, because that was my initial reading too.
Yeah.
Changed my initial reading of this from him saying, yeah, they're going to be fine. These crazy kids today,
Okay.
This young man, he looks like some type of mongrel.
Yes.
Like something rabid. He is thin and slumped. He is weather-beaten. He is aggressive.
Okay.
She is upright and decorated and calm.
Okay.
One would be remiss not to add the speaker's beer and cigarettes to this young man's countenance.
Okay.
Would he not? And wonder if the speaker does not recognize his own failures and lovers lost in this young man and what is currently happening.
Okay.
Is that unfair?
No.
With this reading, that final line, I'm sure they did, must be read much less as an actual assurance and much more like our speaker hoping to dismiss his own regrets with a wave and a hit from a cigarette.
Okay.
I'm sure they made it.
And I agree with you. Those last 4 lines, how you interpret those last 4 lines changed this piece. They're going to make it, I thought. I'm sure they did.
Because what it becomes through that reading, they're going to make it, I thought. I'm sure they did. Reads a lot more like someone will rent us a place.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
And there we have that ironic connection between speaker and subject.
Yes. So if Bukowski would be imposing himself like he's been there, he's done that, they're going to make it, I'm sure they did. you can hope that this man who's sitting and watching is just selfless, and he hopes that they make it. You could read it in an ironic tone as well. I'm sure they're going to make it. I thought, I'm sure they did.
Right.
It's how you interpret that last line really changes this poem for you.
And getting back to an earlier point, why is that?
Why is that?
Because Bukowski does not judge. Bukowski simply presents.
He is quite literally the watcher.
Right.
He observes.
And he could be judging with these lines.
He could.
But he never lets us know.
This is true. I would like to think this is not a judgmental piece. When you're the guy who sits outside, smokes cigarettes, and drinks beer, and you live the Bukowski life from what we know from Bukowski, you're not really a very judgmental person. You're pretty open to about anybody from all walks of life.
Have you read much Bukowski?
Yeah. Follow me here. Bukowski was an interesting person, had some interesting quirks to him, but about anybody who walked into Bukowski's life, he'd give him a chance.
Sure.
He'd tell you if you didn't like him. If he didn't like him, he might kick you in the face on live video. You never know.
He was a weird fella.
He was a weird fella. But it's just that attitude, that nature, it's very open. I mean, it doesn't matter where you come from, who you are, you do you.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's a judgmental piece. I'd like to hope it isn't.
Well, but again, the onus is upon the reader.
It is.
It does not matter if this is a judgmental piece.
It's what you want to bring to it.
It's not what you want to bring to it. It's what you are primed to bring to the text.
Okay.
So this is where we get... It is texts such as this which build a different skill of literary analysis, right? So you've got the Billy Wigglestick poems, the sonnets, and what you're doing there, first off, is you're trying to figure out what the hell he's talking about.
Okay, yeah.
You don't have that struggle here. You jump straight to the secondary level here.
Very simple language.
Right, which is we're trying to understand what the poem is actually about. The big about and the little about. The little about, there's a guy and his girlfriend pushing stuff along the street. Okay. The big about is this a man trying to forget his own past?
Okay.
Right?
And there's good evidence for that. Bukowski was a troubled man. He was always trying to escape himself.
Right.
But he was also enveloped in himself. He needed his loneliness. But he didn't like it.
Right.
But he did.
Right. He had to have it.
He had to have it.
Like cigarettes.
Yeah. Yeah.
You get the sense, and the booze, you get the sense in a lot of these poems. Bukowski didn't like cigarettes or booze, but he had to have them.
Yes. It's that crutch, man. Gets you through the day.
Well, not only that, you become dependent.
True.
Like not just a crutch, but an absolute necessity.
Okay.
Like drinking your water in the morning. Like some people have to take
water in the morning?
I drink a lot of water now.
I'm very proud of you.
Some people have to have their melatonin to sleep, right?
Okay.
It becomes one of those things.
All right. Is there any other points you want to hit on real quick?
I've got one that I wanted to save for the end because I wanted some distance from the text. Close your eyes. Do you remember the verbiage Bukowski used for the cheap lawn chair on his front porch?
No.
Do you remember how he described himself leaning up to look at this couple?
No.
Do you remember him waving his hand at the end?
No.
Did those things happen?
Quite possibly.
Do you? So just from memory, like your feeling of this poem, did those things happen?
Is he sitting on a lawn chair in his lawn? Absolutely. On the front deck, whatever. Yeah, he is. Did he wave to him? Yeah, good chance. That's what you do when you make eye contact.
What kind of lawn chair? Just when you picture the poem.
I see the old metal lawn chair with like the woven just strips of nylon, basically. Is it actually?
None of those things happen.
Yeah.
None of those things happen. But Bukowski has used such language to describe the character, to present the speaker, that these are absolutely things
that you imagine
that we see in the poem.
Fair enough.
These are absolutely things that we see in the poem.
That's why Bukowski's great, man.
Yeah. It's about giving you, just like Hemingway, a lot of it is about, and this is no accident, Bukowski idolized Hemingway.
Yes.
Bukowski set Hemingway as a hero. Bukowski utilizes everything that he knows you know in his own poetry.
Okay.
So 200 years from now, when people don't have chairs, they have hovercrafts, this poem might not work.
Okay.
Or it might work precisely because you're not told he's sitting on it, you're not explained to the chair.
Yeah. But this again goes back to the point of this is what you bring to this piece. Everybody knows this man from their hometown. Guy who sat outside, he might wave to traffic when the traffic drove by. Maybe he's just a sweet old man, that's what he does time. Maybe we don't go near that house. He's a little kooky.
Maybe he's a sweet old man that we don't risk and go near that house anyway.
Yeah,
right?
don't set him off now.
There's levels of this.
But everybody knows that person, and it's all about what you bring into this. It's what you get from your interpretation from it.
And it also becomes about your judgments.
True.
So if you are let's throw it out there, if you're a radicalized feminist, 20 words into the poem, you hate the guy already.
Yep. He's sitting there just watching women walk by.
So 20 words into the poem, you've discredited him.
Okay.
And you're going to be looking for something terrible in this poem.
That's the wonderful thing about interpreting poems. It's what you bring to it.
Yeah.
And that's the greats. Anyway, so we kind of had a little bit of a discussion, kind of pre-game for this, and you said that I would hate your recommendation right after I said you're going to hate my recommendation.
Well, we got to get the rating first.
Okay.
What do you rate the poem?
Honestly, I didn't give it a score. Little rusty on this here. But I would put it in the... I give it high 80s. I enjoy it.
I give this only an 80 skate wheels out of 100.
Okay.
But I don't... Again, it's something that you grow into, right? The more time you spend with Bukowski, Mark...
The more you're going to hate yourself.
The more you're going to hate yourself, the more you're going to hate life, and the more you're going to love Bukowski.
Okay, that's fair. That's very true. What am I reading after this, Adrian?
I recommend On the Road by Jack Kerouac.
I hate you as a person.
This reads a lot... I mean, he's watching those characters, right? Okay. Remember when old boy has the woman was it Mexico he picked up a woman?
I've tried to...
Or was it a Mexican woman in California that he picked up and went back to Mexico with her? I can't remember. But either way, like, they were that couple, right? So this is Bukowski judging that couple. Yeah.
There's a poem, and it's written by a lonely man who's just observing things go by.
Oh, Christ's sake.
And I don't know what it's called, but I think you might be able to dig it up for me, is you wrote a poem about painting the eaves. Oh. And some women drove by and yelled something at you. And
I love you.
That was your connection with them. You're the Bukowski of that poem.
And it was the most in-depth relationship I'd had in a long time.
So I don't know if we can
on
link
the internet.
It is on the internet.
If that website, if that publication is still active.
If we can link it, that is what you need to read, is Adrian a la Bukowski painting leaves. So that's my recommendation for this.
Well, I hope that you liked this, because you're not going to get many Adrian Fort literary recommendations in life. So maybe hit a like button. Subscribe if you have not. And if you would like to help us create more content here on Strip Cover Lit, there's a link, as always, to our Patreon to be found in the description below. Will be our no. What'll happen is you're gonna fucking quit again. You're gonna post those to ruin me.
Yes, I will take you down. The strangest sight you ever did.